Good morning. It's Ayin Beis, Volume 3. We're on page 1466. So in the new paragraph on page 1466 began discussing Ner Mitzvah. After explaining Ner Neshama, Ner Hashem Nishma Sodam, how a soul is compared to a flame, the wick of the divine soul drawing from the oil of the animal soul, the wisdom of the animal soul, creating a divine fire. So the same with the mitzvah is also compared to a flame, a candle. And he asked, what are the three things? I said, so in order to understand it, we need to further understand what a neshama is. Or more specifically, that the neshama, when it comes down below, though it needs the support of the angels to illuminate and help inspire the soul, but this is the soul itself that has the power to transform the darkness of this world, the darkness of the animal soul. So he asked two things. Why is it dafke b'koyach neshama? Why specifically the soul? And how does the soul have that power? When you're dealing with an animal soul that is the diametric opposite to bittul, and here you have a soul being able to transform a nefesh habamis, which is betekef Yesh is the nega hepech habittul legamri. It's in intense in its own egocentric and self-interest mode, which is the exact opposite of bittul. So how does it have the power? So to understand that, Yesh lahagdim, we need to further understand what is Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and Baruch Shem, the first two statements that in turn allow us to reach Vahafta. In other words, to be able to figure out how you can create a love that's B'chol Levavcha, B'shnei Tzarecha, a love that affects not just that affects also the animal soul. So we have to look at what brought to that love. So the question he's asking, how does the neshama do it? We have to understand, how do you get to that love? Because it follows Shema and Baruch Shem, which he calls Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah. A higher state of unity and a lower state of unity. In other words, Yichud is, he said, the mitzvah of Shema Yisrael in general is a mitzvah, the foundational mitzvah, to use the words he uses here, mitzvah Yichud Elakus, unification of God. And that, in turn, consists of two levels, Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah, which in general is Sevav Kalaman and Mamala Kalaman, the divine that transcends existence and the divine within existence. And the goal here is to understand both, and here we are, the higher level of Yichud and the lower level of Yichud, and then the Yichud of both these two levels of Yichud. That's part of this as well. To understand that both forms of unification are really all one. And this indeed is also the Yichud of Kudsha Bricha and Shchinta, which is the Yesod of Kol HaMitzvahs, the foundation of all the mitzvahs, as we learned also earlier. Now, in general, the two levels of Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah is Shema and Baruch Shem. And he explains, what is Hashem Echad? Hashem Echad is not just that God is one, but God is the singular, the only one, the only reality. Not just one, but the only true reality. And the Yichud, the mitzvah of Yichud, is to understand that even after the worlds were created, the Yichud of Hashem does not change in any way. It's exactly the same. The only thing that changes is the creation. And from our perspective, we are able to have an independent consciousness with the goal of coming to appreciate that this independent consciousness is also part of the divine. But the Eibush himself created that. As he explains in Shari Chud V'Amunah, through the Tzimtzum is also godly power. However, it's the godly power to conceal. So from God's point of view, when the teacher conceals his wisdom, the teacher doesn't change. He remains completely intact with everything he knows. but he's concealing it from the student. And the concealment is also part of the teacher's power. Hein hein v'reisa. So the truth is, ultimately, like we've learned at length earlier, when we do our work, we come to discover God both in the very process of, in the creation itself, and even in the process of concealment, is also a divine force. Like we learned about Einoid. So all of it ultimately is all the divine unity, but it's up to us now to come to discover it and appreciate it and integrate it. So the truth is, it's Yachid, exactly, because existence, if you see it in the true light, it's completely bottled betachlis, completely nullified in the presence of God. It's not nullified because we don't see that, but in the presence of God, it's completely bottled betachlis. Einay Jalasi is Baruch. And this is due to the Eid Ein Sof that is completely beyond existence. Shalamayla Elamis. Compared to this level, there's no mitzias of existence at all. If you're able to see it from the bird's eye view, or from the perspective from Lifnei Eid Ein Sof Lamayla Elamis, there's no existence. Existence is completely only a divine manifestation. Baruch Shem Kvei Malchusei, on the other hand, Leilam Vad, refers to the reflection that becomes, that's a mokar la'elamis. This is already the divine as he chooses to become a source for existence. That's Baruch Shem Kvei Malchusei. And Legaba Madrega Zu, in comparison to this level of the divine that's already engaging with and relating to existence, here, Elamis are Metzias Dover, because God is associating and relating with it, as I explained more at length yesterday. However, they're also bottled, but bitl hayesh. So you can't say existence doesn't exist. Existence is there. However, that existence is aligned with and essentially a vehicle for godliness. That's where we stopped. And I'm ready to continue 4 lines from the bottom of the page. What he's going to say now is that that's in general. Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah, Shema and Baruch Shem. He's not going to say in Shema itself, you can also explain Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah. Ubeprotius, and when you break it down, the text at the bottom of the page can be found at ayinbeis.com. Ubeprotius, when you break it down in detail, these 2 levels of Yichud, the higher Yichud, the higher unity, and the lower unity, are both of them are in the first chapter, in the first verse. So in other words, in general, it's Krishma, Shema, Yisrael, and Baruch Shem. But now in Shema, he's going to show us that there's 2 statements as well. The Hashem Elokeinu, the first Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hu B'chinus Yichuda Ilaah. That's Yichuda Ilaah, Hashem Elokeinu. And then the last 2 words, Hashem Echad, Hashem Echad, Yichuda Tataah, is Yichuda Tataah. So as is common in Chassidus, you'll sometimes speak in general terms, and then it'll break down and find those very 2 levels, even in one of those levels itself. This is very common because it's all iskalus, it's all relative. So you see now in Shema itself, Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah. Hashem Elokeinu. Shema Yisrael is the opening. Hashem Elokeinu is the Yichuda Ilaah. And Hashem Echad is Yichuda Tataah. And he brings a proof for this. As it's written in the writings of the Arizal. The Hashem Elokeinu Yichud Avah. Hashem Elokeinu is the Yichud of Chachma and Bina, Abba v'Ima. Avah is Abba v'Ima, the father and the mother, which is Chachma and Bina. Hashem Echad is Yichud Zun, Zah v'Nukva, Zah and Malchus. So you see 2 different Yichudim. One is the Yichud of Chachma and Bina, it's a higher level of Yichud. And the second is a Yichud Zun, is a lower level of Yichud. The Yadua, as it's known, because it's known, the Abba v'Ima, the Avah, Hein Lamayla Ma'elamis, that's higher than the world. So when a person, for example, in a human being, when you're using your mind, it's an internal thing between you and yourself. Your midas are associated with another. I feel for another. Feelings. But when you're exclusively in your mind, as a matter of fact, another would be only a disturbance. You're within, so it's considered to be above. So the same thing, Lamaila, when you talk about Chachma and Bina, you're saying it is the divine mind, but it's a divine mind that's disassociated and not directly connected. Lamaila ma'elamus. Ukamaimer, like we say, Alpaim Shana, Kodma Torah la'elam. That the Torah precedes the world by 2,000 years. So what's explained? What's the 2,000? Not time. Alefcha Chachma, Alefcha Bina. That the word Aleph, Alofim, two. Aleph comes from that word Alefcha, like a teacher. The level of teaching Chachma and the level of teaching Bina. There are two states. And that's the Chachma Bina Abba Ve'ima Kodma La'olam precedes existence. Valkein Shamhu Yichuda Ilaah. And therefore there it's a Yichuda of Yichuda Ilaah, like we said, Yichuda Ilaah is the Ein Sof that's higher than the worlds. And therefore the worlds are completely nullified in its presence. So that's Yichuda Ilaah. V'zun and Zah and Malchus, that's already how God is associating Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, all the way to Malchus. The Yichud of Zah and Malchus, they already are associated and a source of the worlds. That's like we said before, Mamal Kalam. Sheshamu Yichuda Tataah. And there, the Yichud is a Yichuda Tataah. There's existence, but the existence is aligned, Bitla Yesh, aligned with the divine. So there you have the two levels of Yichud. Firstly, Shema and Baruch Shem, and now he explains how in Shema itself, you have both dimensions. With that, he concludes the paragraph. And now he's going to start explaining it. Any questions before I continue?
Is this happening in the reference to Abba Ve'ima and Zun? Is this in Atzilus or is this above Atzilus? Is this in?
This is usually, we refer to spheres without saying where it is. It's usually Atzilus.
Thank you.
Okay. Next page, 1467. Albeit the Inyan. So now, give you the lay of the land here. This is going to take us till the end of Ayin Beis. He's not coming back to the Ner Mitzvah and the questions that we asked on this page.
I'm sorry, one more question?
Just to say, let me just finish my sentence.
Okay.
So this is going to take us now, and he does not come back to the questions that he asked about Ner Mitzvah and the two questions about the Neshama, why the Neshama has this power, and how does it have this power. But he's going to be explaining now in the next 10 pages, the final 10 pages, the beer of Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah, and they're joining together. So when you come to the end, it'll be like explaining everything that we're learning now. So it's going to be 10 pages explaining the points we just discussed. The Yichud of Shema, of Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah. That will tell us, of course, how you come to V'ahavta, B'chol Avavcha, B'shnei Yitzarecha. So that we're going to need to do some extrapolation and some elaboration on that. Just beginning to set the stage here for where this is going. So the next 10 pages is focused completely on these two levels of Yichud. As a matter of fact, he's not going to get back to, it's going to be a longer arichus now about the relationship we have with God, the different levels of relationship, and he's going to get back to Yichud back on page 1472. So next 5 pages is all discussion before he gets back to what are the differences between the two Yichudim, Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah. But just to give you the sense of what is going on here, it ultimately comes down to this. You cannot transform the animal soul if you don't speak to it. Like I spoke about mediation. If you're just going to speak from in a condescending way or from the top down, the animal soul will not be transformed. So in the question that he asked, how do you create bittul in something that's total yesh and has no bittul? It can't be by force, and it can't be by imposition. It's going to have to be by communicating with it. That's where Yichuda Tataah comes so vital and important. You try to explain Yichuda Ilaah to the animal soul, it's not going to work initially, because the animal soul is busy with its own needs. it first has to understand godliness on its terms, which is Yichuda Tataah, before you can get to Yichuda Ilaah. So that's going to help explain and understand how the neshama indeed convinces the nefesh habamis, which of course takes us back to the central theme of Ayin Beis. The central theme of Ayin Beis is what? Is interface. An interface that the divine is integrated within existence. That we transform the tzimtzum, not that we eliminate it, or we bypass it, or we impose ourselves, that we transform it. And transforming the tzimtzum means you have to speak to existence on its terms. So Yichuda Tataah starts playing such a central role because it's ultimately the way to do that. And that's a critical step in the whole process that we've been learning. Mutfa, Murgish, Muskel, that you go from the bottom up. So I am giving somewhat of a preview of how this is going to unfold, because as I said, the Rebbe Rashab is not going to spell out literally the end story. But what I just said is based on both of what it says here in the next pages, as well as the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe that we've been quoting, Hamagbi, which is the Maimiyek Hashem Elokeinu, the Chanukah Maimorim, the Alter Rebbe and the Bir and Teira Eir, and then the Mittler Rebbe 70-page Maimer on this. So, but there'll be much more said about this as we go. I just wanted to outline what is going to be happening now in the next pages. Okay. You wanted to ask another question?
Yes, please. These two levels of Yichudim, Ilaah and Tataah, is this paralleling or essentially another way of saying the process of tikkun? That is to say, and also the birurei on nitzutzos, the repair or the refinement of the nitzutzos sparks that fell when the toe shattered, the kalim toe shattered. In other words, are these all different sort of, I don't know, metaphors, or not metaphors, but approaches to understanding our avoda and the integration of godliness from above and below? Is that also, these yichudim is also essentially associated with tikkun as well? Can you say that, or completely different concepts?
Well, the word yichud by definition means to unify separate entities. Right. Separate entities means either diversity or divisiveness or fragmentation or dissonance of every form. So when you say the mitzvah of yichud, when you say that we Shema Chad, we're basically making a statement that the world that we live in, despite its diversity and its multitudes, and even further than that, even dissonance, and all the details of it are really all part of one divine narrative, if you wish, one divine picture. So in that broad sense, it includes everything. The specifics are absolutely different because, for example, tshuva. Is tshuva a form of Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah? It's a good question. So you can start going through all of the different mitzvahs we have, the different things we do. There are different levels of tikkun, as you put it, tikkun. Tikkun means a lot, just like yichud means a lot. So I would be careful on the details. In general, yes, one thing is to bring God into existence. God is one, existence is multiplicity, and you want to join the two. So, but you start breaking down, there are many ways that this yichud is achieved. But in general, the word yichud, say yichudim, every mitzvah we do is liyachid kutchabrich v'shchinta. It's all joining together two forces. One of them is also the fact that the material world, let's say, has many different sparks allocated to each one of us in different places. And when you elevate a spark, you're essentially creating a unified narrative in that sense, in the broad sense. But when you start breaking it down, it's very different, each aspect of this Avodah. In other words, when you're saying Shema and Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah, we're going to learn inside exactly what should be contemplated upon. But remember, there's a lot more to Torah mitzvahs than just Shema. Shema is the foundational element. And then there's bringing it into different parts of our lives. You know, the difference between Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, between Pesach and Shavuos, and the other holidays. So there's many aspects to this. Here we're talking the very broad strokes. We're talking about Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah, is essentially, like you said, the mitzvah of Yichud. That's how I would contextualize it.
Thank you.
Okay. So Bira Inyan, top of page 1467. The creation of the worlds, or Savas usually means bringing into being of the worlds. Huma Ayin Yesh. Okay. Is with a quantum leap of one paradigm to another paradigm. From Ayin to Yesh. In other words, there's nothing in common between the divine energy and the existence it creates. It's a true creation. He's going to explain what means Yesh Ma'ayin in contrast to Yesh Mi-Yesh. Now, this is vital because this helps us understand that God and us are not the same, we're not made of the same material. And I say God, I don't mean now Atzmus. I'm talking about the divine energy within existence. It's a different reality. Pirush, Ma'ayin Mamish, V'lo Yesh Mi-Yesh. Then we say Yesh Ma'ayin, we mean Ayin Mamish, and we learned earlier, Ayin doesn't mean nothingness. It means nothing compared to the Yesh. From the Yesh's point of view, you'd say, where did it come from? I can't identify it because there's nothing in common between myself and my creator, between the producer and the product. So it's called Yesh Ma'ayin Mamish. So Ayin has actually two meanings. One is completely different reality, and Ayin also means it's like a mystery. This he explained at the end of volume 2. What's the contrast to Yesh Ma'ayin? Yesh Mi-Yesh. One entity from another that are of the same paradigm. Yichuda Ilaah. That's called cause and effect. I mean, the simplest, every example would be example. You take a pitcher of water and you pour someone a cup of water. That's not Yesh Ma'ayin. That's Yesh Mi-Yesh. That's not even Yesh Mi-Yesh, to be honest. But basic cause and effect means that the cause and effect are commensurate and proportionate to each other. And you see immediately the cause and the effect. So, for example, to say once a child is conceived, the development and through the gestation period, through pregnancy, is Yesh Mi-Yesh. But from the moment before conception to the moment of conception, you would be called relatively Yesh Ma'ayin. Just as an example, because you don't even have a cell yet before conception. So you have the potential, you have all kinds of things. It's not Mamish Yesh Ma'ayin in the highest sense of the word, because there's still an egg and a seed. But relatively speaking, just point out. So Yesh Mi-Yesh is Ilaah v'Ol. Shazehu. Okay, what's that? Okay, so now he's going to explain at length this piece, next good few pages. I think all the way actually for 5 pages, he's going to explain the difference between Yesh Ma'ayin and Yesh Mi-Yesh. Now you may wonder, why is it so important? What's wrong with saying that God created existence like Yesh Mi-Yesh? He created one subtle form of matter, and that subtle form of matter evolves into the Yesh that we have today. Why is that a problem? The problem is with that we ultimately then are not going to go through a state of bittul to connect to God, because we're just another evolved form of divine that just evolved from the divine. And for us to really appreciate godliness on his terms, we need to know there's a infinite distance between. Second point, you can't really create a Yesh the way we are a Yesh. Like we talked before, the Nefesh Abam says, take if Yeshes. If it was Ilaah v'Ol, then how could we be so far apart that a person could exist in this world and say, Aniva Afsied, me and nothing else? So you have to say somewhere there's some leap that conceals in an extreme way the divine. If it's just a matter of looking for the cause and effect, then it would be easy to find God. And we see it's not easy. Look how many people deny God. Because from the Yesh to the Ayin requires a leap. Scientists will tell you, I can tell you everything about Yesh Mi-Yesh, that existence today evolved from earlier states and then evolved all the way back to the Big Bang. So that's all Yesh Mi-Yesh. That's how the Yesh They're turned into the Yesh today. They'll talk us how planets were born, how stars are born. They'll talk about the whole process of how everything evolves, even billions of years. Not getting now into the Torah view of the age of the universe from a scientific perspective. But as soon as you ask, how did the first ball of gas get there? No scientist can answer that question. It's complete speculation, or they don't talk about it because it's not our domain. Could it be God? Obviously, it could be. Some may say it is. Some may say, I don't know. But bottom line is because they're dealing with a domain that's not a Yesh. You're dealing with something that put the Yesh there that is not similar to it. So bottom line is, for the Yesh to become a Yesh, there has to be this quantum leap, this paradigm shift. And I said from both perspectives. First, the creation of it. And second of all, the process of us reconnecting. Or as many atheists ask the question, when you say Ein Davar Eses Atzmei, nothing can create itself. Therefore, that compels us to say that existence was created. So immediately the childish question is, okay, so then who created God? If nothing can create itself, who created God then? And the answer is because God is unlike any Yesh. That's the whole point. If God is just another Yesh in a higher state and a more subliminal or more ethereal state, then you have the same question. Yesh mi Yesh, and who created the first Yesh? But the fact that it's Ayin tells you it's a different reality. So very much part of Achdus Hashem that we began discussing is recognize that God is not like us. We are a Yesh, and as such, we're also divided and separated. So we have a multiplicitous world filled with differences, and Hashem Echad is a different reality. Now, the level of Ayin itself, we're going to learn there's two levels of Ayin. There's Das Elyon, Das Tachton, Yichuda Ilaah, Yichuda Tataah. But right now, the discussion is the difference between Yesh mi Yesh and Yesh ma Ayin. So now he continues. You'll see why I just gave this longer introduction. Shezeu Tos HaPhilasufim. This is the mistake of the philosophers. Shecheshvim, that think, Sheisavas Habriya Ma'abediyas Baruch, that the creation of the world from the Creator, who b'derech ilav al, is in a form of cause and effect. Shezeh muhus lemuhus. This means from muhus to muhus, from one personality to another, but of the same material, so to speak. The muhus ha'ila nimshech al, that the personality of the cause, or that you can say the identity of the cause, has been transferred over to the effect. So they have something in common. You have here like a link. There's something. One thing is causing another. That's their mistake. They see the universe in that fashion. Ukamoi miseichel amidus. Classic example of ilav al in human faculties is intelligence and emotions. Shemahus seichel, when a person contemplates on something and they understand it, the personality of the intelligence nimshach ba'ol, that itself transmits to the effect, that it affects an emotion, a feeling. So if you contemplate and concentrate on something that is very attractive, and the mind tells you this is very valuable and precious, that in turn speaks to your heart, and your heart will be drawn and attracted to this entity. So that's two muhusim. It's muhus, seichel and midas are not the same, but they speak to each other. They communicate in the way of ilav al, cause and effect. The Yadua, the parenthesis, let me just stop if anybody wants to ask anything so far on what we said here. The Yadua, and it's known, the Haskolas HaSeichel B'chlal, that conceiving of an idea in general, Hu ha'or levad, is only a reflection, loy atzmi. It's not etzem. We'll see in a minute why he's saying this. which it just helps explain why it's ilah v'ol. What does it mean it's not etzem? When you teach, let's say, an idea to a student, it's not like giving birth to a child. When parents give birth to a child, the child is the very essence, the very genetic matter, this genetic stuff of the parent is transferred over in the DNA to the child. When a teacher teaches Askola, Seichel is ha'ara. It's not etzem, hanefesh. It's a reflection, meaning it's coming from the faculty of the mind of the teacher. The student has already a mind before the teacher met the student, and the teacher's idea is communicating to the mind of the student. So this is called ha'ara, loy atzmi, v'hainu, and this means the gamasha maskil b'seichel ha'atzmei, that this is true not only in communicating seichel, but also the seichel that he conceives of on his own, meaning the person himself conceives an idea. It's only is rak ha'ara. How is it rak ha'ara? It's only a reflection. It's not an expression of your etzem. It's one of your faculties. You could do as known, that's the difference between the ashpa of seichel, of intelligence, and ashpa atmis, which is like I gave the example of birth. So when you think of an idea, your very genetic material, your genetic matter is not necessarily being conveyed there. It's a reflection of the soul. It's not the atzmi of it. Like it says elsewhere. V'im kain. And what do we derive from this? So therefore, mahus inyan aseich askola huraka ora. The very personality of askola is only a reflection. V'eisem mahus shel askola nimshach me'etzem mahusei ba'amida. So if the seichel was an atzmi, then a jump from etzem to mides would be much more than yesh b'yesh, because that's a whole other story. Now that we've established seichel is ha'ara, yes, it's maybe superior to midas, but therefore that muhus of askola, of that reflection, from there nimshach me'etzem muhusei ba'amida, from the etzem muhus of the seichel goes into the midah, basically saying that both mechin and midas are both faculties of the soul. They're both reflections. So one reflection, the reflection of intelligence, or the manifestation of intelligence, ultimately enters into the manifestation of midas. Now, why this is important to add, I think we'll understand as we learn on. If not, I'll explain it more. But just for now, that's what he said. Let's see what he says after the prayer.
That includes chachma too, right?
What? Seichel. Seichel is everything. What difference does it make?
That's sort of like up there. Okay. I didn't realize that's how an
Chachma is the beginning of a concept. It's the first spark of an idea. This includes all of Moichin, Seichel. Remember, Chachma and Bina are the two states of Seichel. Bina takes from Chachma, and from that will give birth to Midas. Generally, it's Chachma, Bina, Das, as he explains in Tanya. To give birth to Midi, you need Chachma, Bina, and Das. The father, the mother, and their skashas between them, the connection between them. Okay?
How can an innovation, a brand new invention, a brand new idea, or let's say a brand new piece of art, how can that be an ha'ara? Why is that not atzmi?
I told you, atzmi would be if you give birth to a child. So the parents, very etzem, is going into the child. Anything else is a reflection, is like sunlight as opposed to the sun itself. Because the seichel does not communicate, is only like a sunlight compared to the nefesh. It's not from the etzem nefesh. It's a faculty. It's like a tool, an instrument of the nefesh. Doesn't take away from a new concept. It could be a new concept. It could be a new piece of art. That's not the point. The point is, what is it in relation to the creator of the art? So he calls that seichel is considered to be a reflection of the creator, not a etzem of the creator. An artist creates a piece of art. It's not like when he gives birth to a child. Okay. Well, let's continue reading after the parentheses, and let's see here. Ukamoi Kishamaskil be'eza dover. I'm going to explain it now. Like when a person can maskil, he conceives of any idea. Umasigay v'yedei teiv hadover, or tuv hadover, and he comprehends the value. Either it means, the value of the thing that he's contemplating on. Va'ili sheboy, and its superior quality, its preciousness, its value. I said teiv hadover would be the quality of it, and ilui would be its value, probably. So when he does that, nirgish belev v'nasa tam el amida, that contemplation of the seichel is going to affect the person. Because we're not just talking about an abstract idea, but one that he appreciates and sees its value. That will be felt in the heart, v'nasa tam el amida, and it will create a reason, basically a driving force, for you to have an emotional reaction to it. That's how seichel communicates to midas. Umizehu shenispol b'ispilus hamida, and muzeh. And from this, once these steps are in place, so you contemplate on something you've never heard before. Let's say someone introduces you to something, and you realize to your mind, wow, this is really valuable. This is worthwhile exploring. And that in turn speaks to the heart, and the heart says, yeah, the heart is drawn to it. So mizeh, from this will come, shenispol b'ispilus hamida. This will bring the excitement and the stimulation, I should say, maybe better words, the stimulation of the spilus hamida, the dynamic of a midah, of an emotion, a dynamic emotion. V'zehu, and this is what we're saying here. Shenimshach v'mehus ha'seichel ba'midah. This is the meaning that the mehus ha'seichel has been transmitted and transferred into the midah. Not that the midah became seichel. Seichel didn't turn the midah, the emotion, but the seichel, they're communicating with each other. They're commensurate to each other. So this is the meaning what he said before. Nimshach b'mehus ha'seichel el ba'midah. Hainu she'yedias ha'teiv shel hadavar shebeseichel. This means that the awareness of the goodness or the quality of this thing that the mind is understanding, Bo belev, comes in the heart, enters the heart. Shenasa b'chinas tam el amida. This gives a reason, a justification, a driving reason for this emotion. We're not just talking about a reflexive emotion. We're talking about an emotion that's directed by something you thought about and appreciated. And the stimulation or the excitement of the intellectual excitement that we've learned about before has now become a spalus hamida shebelev, has stimulated an emotion in the heart. Well, the elaboration of all of this will be very well understood once we contrast it with Yesh Ma'ayin. But here the Rebbe Rashab is definitely not always doing this in Ayin Beis, Volume 3 especially, fleshing things out this way. This is a pretty elaborate, relatively speaking, as you can see. Like a few pages back, things were far more dense in just a few lines. Here he's repeating certain ideas and embellishing it and laying and developing in detail. Because ultimately this is the contemplation to appreciate Yichuda Ilaah and Yichuda Tataah. So he's laying out exactly what the contemplation consists of. So far, we've established what is Yesh mi Yesh, Ilaah v'Olul, and the example of Seichel and Midas. So we see here that the Seichel and Midah are not exactly the same entity, but it's not Yesh Ma'ayin either. It's cause and effect. The Midah, you can trace the feeling of attraction to something to the reason behind it that came from the mind's contemplation. That's so far what he said. And that the Spilus in the Moyach has now been translated and transferred over to Spilus now in the heart, that you're emotionally drawn to it. And you see this, just to give a few simple example. Person, let's say, learns Chassidus for the first time, or even not for the first time. They get their mind very intrigued and very attractive, and you get excited about the idea. So what happens next? Your feelings get involved, and you want more of it. You want to go back to the source. What can I learn more? And not just you want to learn more, you start experiencing things. Or people hear about the Rebbe. They hear great things. So first the mind gets intrigued, is curious. You learn more about it, and then you want to have a connection, you want to have a relationship. So this example can be applied in so many different ways, how the mind is the first step in being exposed to something, making you aware of its value, which is critical. Because you don't want your emotions to get the better of you and to be emotionally manipulated. You want to make sure with your mind that you're thinking it through properly, you're doing your due diligence, and then you can say to the heart, you know what? This looks safe, this looks valuable, this looks like something we can trust. And then the emotions start becoming more and more stimulated. This is the process of dating, this is the process of any due diligence, any research, any discovery. First you discover, you look, you research, you figure out, you try to find out everything you can. And then what happens is if you find value there, the emotions of the heart will start being activated. This is what he's explaining here, a process of Yesh, Yesh, Ilaah va'ol. Not finished yet, but that's so far what he said. I think I'm going to stop here because now he's going to go into parentheses to qualify this even more. It's not a short parentheses, like something like, looks like 8 or 9 lines, maybe. 9
More
lines.
than that. About 15. Oh, maybe, no.
No, it's right. 9 lines. There's another parentheses after that, but that's, it ends Resh Ayin Ches. Yeah, 9 lines.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to stop here before the parentheses. Any questions? Okay. Well, as I said, still in the middle of the topic, and he's elaborating quite till the end of the paragraph. It's all going to be by Yesh Yesh, and the next paragraph is going to go back to Yesh Ayin, I believe. Yeah. So let's stop here. So the top third of page 1467.
I have a question. Is there any way you can give us a glimpse of why he's prefacing understanding of Ner Mitzvah, Torah, or why he's prefacing all of this? It's a long preface to explaining that mashal.
I'd wait with that. I already believe I gave some overview of that in previous classes. And ultimately, it's in my of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe that will also help enlighten on that matter. But I'll do that in the coming classes. I have, obviously, I mentioned a number of times, so.
Okay. But
if you look back at the overview that I gave when I started the whole topic on page 1463, I went back to 1350. We went over the whole thing. I laid out the whole thing with Torah and Ner Mitzvah and the Shema. So I did discuss it, but I will discuss it more as we go along.
Okay.
I can just say my mitos are very affected by today by the Chachman, Bina, and Das of this class. I wrote down this is one of the most important classes. I can see the Rebbe wrapping things up here. It's unbelievable. Even the question that I had, and I think Yitzhak had, about how you have Yichuda Ilaah before Yichuda Tataah, the Rebbe answered it within Shema itself. You have to have Chachman Bina, understanding within yourself before you can affect your mitos and your actions. And
okay.
It's really exciting. This is amazing. I think he's putting it all together here.
Yes, it is.
I just want to comment that it always was very interesting to me that in that famous letter of the Baal Shem Tov to his brother-in-law, Gershon Kitover, I think it is, where he writes, that he met Mashiach, Erev Rosh Hashanah, where we're holding right now. And he wrote that he asked when is he coming, and Mashiach answered him, and that's the famous location of where it says Kishafutza Ma'aseh Chutza. But a lot of people, I don't know if they, unless they actually read the letter, realize that after that, he says to the Baal Shem Tov, and people are able to do Yechudim Kamocha. That you're able to do Yechudim Kamocha, and the Baal Shem Tov got depressed because he says, how are they going to be able to do Yechudim like myself? And then he mentions three names. The Mashiach says three names there to Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov was relaxed when he heard these three names. So I've asked a number of mashpiyim, what we always emphasize Yechutza Ma'aseh Chutza, but what about that last part of Yechudim Kamocha? And here the Rabbi Rashab is emphasizing the unique importance, the cheshivas of Yechudim, being able to do them, and the unique way of Chabad and the unique way of the Rebbe. So to me, it's personally answering a question I've had for a long time about what about the Yechudim Kamocha.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And much more will be coming. Yeah.
Thank you, Eliezer. That was really brilliant insights. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
that was nice. That was terrific. Thank you. Right.
I'm very happy to hear that. Very good. Good thinking. Okay. So we're stopping here at the top third of page 14.